Well, Extinction Rebellion have been protesting across London for the last 2 weeks now, disrupting transport links and even attracting some famous faces to join their cause. And to discuss this further, I'm joined now by Richard Ecclestone, Extinction Rebellion member and a former police officer, and James Woudhuysen, who's a visiting professor of forecasting and innovation at London South Bank University. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. So, Richard, this guy climbing the scaffolding, do you support him? Was he doing the right thing? He's the sort of person you would have arrested once upon a time.
I know, that's quite ironic, really, isn't it? But yes, no, I do support what he's done. What he's doing there is what he said he was doing, is trying to highlight the climate and ecological emergency that we face, and doing it in quite a fun way, but also something that attracts the media attention. I think the great thing about what we've been doing recently is that we are having these conversations about the crisis now, and these are things that wouldn't have happened 5 years ago when climate and ecological emergency wasn't even really talked about.
OK, so perhaps a bit of fun, dressing up as Boris Johnson or whatever with his banners. But what wasn't so fun was yesterday, commuters really being disrupted on the Underground and on the DLR here in London. A lot of abuse, a lot of angry people, a lot of upset people as well. That's not how to get your message across. Indeed,
no, and I understand those sentiments, I really do. And, as we've said before as a movement, we do apologise sincerely to Londoners for the disruption that we've caused. Unfortunately, we've had to do this because our government simply is not listening. It is not responding in the way that it should. I used to be an emergency planner. Now, after the April rebellion, not the government, but Parliament declared a climate and ecological emergency. Unfortunately, we've seen no emergency response since then. We've just had words, we've not had action. An emergency requires an immediate and urgent response.
James
We've not seen that yet.
Just words, not action.
Well, I'm really surprised that a former police officer and an army officer doesn't take emergency vehicles getting to accidents and crimes, including knife crime in London, that you don't take that seriously in the way that you impeded the normal movement of workers, including police workers. Your movement obstructed that, and it incurred the wrath of commuters quite properly, in my view. It's one thing to do a fun stunt on Big Ben, that harms nobody. To obstruct people getting to work is a new departure in British politics, if I may say so, Jonathan, which is that workers used to go on strike against employers. Now what we've got is Extinction Rebellion representing the forces of consumption, because this is what they think is all that goes on in modern capitalism, and they are leading a consumer rebellion for austerity, for less driving, less flying, less consuming. And I think workers quite properly resent that.
But those are all good things, aren't they? We should be we should be flying less. We should be consuming less.
I don't agree.
To protect the environment.
No, I don't agree.
Really?
If you want scientists to fix climate change, which is something that I agree that we need fixing, then you need the widest possible intercourse between scientists, between different people who are experts in the field, and you can't just do that by Skype. The logic of what Extinction Rebellion is suggesting is that we cannot fly, we cannot even drive cars after 2025. Rupert, your spokesman on transport, has said that he wants all cars banned from 2025 and no electric replacements. That shows the cavalier attitude to living standards and people going about their business.
Richard, you're looking confused. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say to that. I mean, firstly, I've been out on the streets for the last 2 weeks, and I can assure you we have been letting emergency vehicles through when they have needed to get through.
Well, it's very generous of you. And I'm sure people love your condescension in that matter.
I wouldn't
but I think other people would like to get to work, and other people would like to see a former police officer concern himself with real emergencies today, namely emergency vehicles and the emergency in this town about knife crime. You're completely avoiding it, and instead you claim to represent the mass of the population in your righteous indignation. This will not do.
Let's let Richard respond.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with you there. Essentially, what we are doing is highlighting the fact that the government is not acting on what is an existential threat. And you may chuckle, but I don't find that amusing. I work with children now. I do forest school and I teach children. And it breaks my heart to see their little faces and to wonder what kind of world we are bequeathing.
So you claim to represent them, do you?
Please,
you represent future generations, is that right?
Please let me finish. It's only good manners to do that. But I don't claim to represent them. All I am stating is my emotional feeling when I see those children, and I despair about the future that is in store for them if we do not act now to tackle this emergency. It's not about us and our selfish desires. It is about the future. We are likely to bequeath a future which is dystopian in its nature for tomorrow's generation. That is patently unfair, and I am not going to stand by and do nothing about that.
James,
I feel it's my duty to do that. I am privileged enough to live in this country. I'm privileged enough to be from the class and colour that I am. I can do this kind of demonstrating.
But you're losing the support of the people, aren't you?
Well, I'm not sure
people who
that
may
we
have
are.
suggested that this was a good way of making their voice heard. Now they've had enough.
OK, and I accept that people in London have probably had enough of the disruption. I get that, I truly do. But if only the government would listen and act on its responsibility. Its first responsibility is to protect its citizens. It is not doing that. It is failing in its duty.
James Woudhuysen, do you have an issue with the fact that we have a climate crisis, or do you have an issue with the way Extinction Rebellion are going about their direct action?
I've already said that I believe we should take action against climate change. And that action has a lot more to do with higher research and development, exploring new technologies, growing more trees, looking at genetically modified trees to make them absorb carbon faster. I'm all in favour of that. That's one thing. It's another thing to indicate your emotional indignation, as you put it, Richard, with normal people trying to get to their jobs.
What about the suffragettes? What about the anti-apartheid movement? People who broke the law were seen as crazy at the time, but actually, eventually, made the world a better place.
Those were noble causes. I'm not sure this cause, which is
climate's not a noble cause.
No, because the way you want to deal with it is by imposing austerity and stoppages on people's normal lives. That is not the way to deal with the real problem. And I would go further. By adopting the kind of tactics you're doing, which are patronising to normal people, you are endangering democracy, and you are inviting the response of police, which is friendly at the moment towards XR, because it's the militant wing of the establishment, but it will not be so friendly to other democratic movements in future if you go on inciting these kinds of incidents. Big Ben is
very
one
quick
thing.
response before
the
we
tube
go.
is another.
I think we might be straying slightly off the point there, but
No, we're not.
I think the key is to remember actually what we're about. We're not describing what solutions that should be there. What we're saying is that we need the government to tell the truth. I don't think the government or the media, no disrespect, are actually reporting the seriousness of the crisis.
It's wall to wall.
And no, I don't think it is.
You must watch more TV, Richard.
Well,
really?
I don't actually have a television, but never mind.
Okay.
So
well, if you had one, you'd see how big Sky's campaign was.
I don't believe that the government, particularly, and to a degree the media outlets, are reporting
thank you very much
sufficiently
for your
on the
time.
crisis.
I'm sorry to wrap things up. Fascinating debate. Richard Ecclestone, James Woudhuysen, thank you both.